Hello and welcome to Coffee with Carey. Before I put my cup down, I wanted to turn it the other way. It says peace. It's an oldie but goodie cup of mine. Thanks for being here today. If you're new, I'm Carey. I'm a matchmaker and a coach, and had a conversation with a brand new client recently. And the person said to me, well, I actually asked them, what type of a relationship are you looking for? What are you looking for at this point in time? And this person was divorced about three and a half years ago. And he said to me, honestly, I don't really know. He said, I'm kind of playing it by ear. I'm not sure if I want to get married again. And I thought, this is something I've been running into more and more. It used to be that I could guarantee a client, for sure, the person I set you up with will be looking for a long-term committed relationship like you are. And that would be super easy to find because that was basically everybody that I was talking to who was going to a matchmaker. But over time, I've had to make certain that I ask this question because more often than ever before, the answer I'm getting is not, I'm looking to get married again. It's, I'm looking for companionship, somebody to travel with or go out to dinner, somebody to hang out with, but I'm not really sure I want to get married or share living space with another person again. And that's even come up a couple times with some clients who have never been married previously. So I'm seeing a little bit of a shift here in marriage, not always being the be-all, end-all goal for some of the people and some of the guys that I'm talking to. And then somebody said to me recently in the comment section here, well, guys don't want to get married anymore. And I probably yelled at him and said, speak for yourself, because that's what I'm always saying. I'm happy always to hear your opinions here, but if you're going to speak for your entire gender, that's ridiculous. You can speak for yourself, and I'd be happy to hear your point of view. Just don't make sweeping generalizations about the rest of us, because that's not fair. You don't know what the rest of us are thinking, and people will be like, well, how do you know? I'm like, I'm talking to people literally about these things. Every day of the week, I am having conversations with men and women about exactly what they're looking for in a partner and narrowing it down to all the most important qualities and some of the lesser but very important qualities, what their goals are in a relationship. Who else has that type of conversations weekly besides somebody who's a coach and a matchmaker? It's crazy to think I wouldn't know. Am I talking to everybody in the country or the world? No, but there's a nice cross-section of people with very different attitudes from different parts of the country, different age segments. So I think it's a pretty good place to start, that I'd have an idea of things changing or trending in a certain direction. And so today I wanted to talk about why it does maybe seem that men are losing interest in getting married. If that's at all interesting to you, stick around. That's what's on the agenda. 45% of our current population in the United States is single, either divorced, widowed, or never been married. That's a pretty big percentage of people. It's the highest that it's ever been. And I'm going to enumerate some of the reasons that I've seen that people have been less interested in that marriage as a goal. And one of them I would say is often seen in the comments section here on my channel, and that is that there's a lot of negative talk. There are segments of this population on YouTube, social media in general, where people are trash talking commitment and trash talking the other gender, and just a lot of negativity, even in a joking manner, that somehow permeates our being, and we internalize some of those thoughts as at least being here, right? Whether they're true or not, there's something we've heard over and over. It can almost become our reality. We're just being more exposed to negativity. And I think a lot of that has to do with the internet and how we're often communicating with other people. Most of the people who come to this channel and leave comments that are, sweeping generalizations about women, and you'll see, you may glance at one before I remove them and block them from my channel, because I give them a second chance. But if they continue just to be negative, I just remove them. This isn't a negative place. We're here to encourage each other and to learn together and share our opinions and our thoughts, and not just you learning from me, but me learning from you in the comments section while you share your opinions and your experiences. But if someone's just coming in and saying, women are trash, they all have high expectations, they want what they're not willing to get, whatever they're talking about, you'll see that on occasion. There's whole segments of the internet that are geared towards that type of conversation. And occasionally you'll see women make comments about men, and I'll say, hey, you may have had that experience, but I have dozens of men that I'm working with currently who do not fit that mold or that stereotype or nothing like that. So let's just not be grouping everybody together. So it goes both ways. I'm not letting anybody talk in generalizations negatively about the other gender here, because it's not fair and it's really just not accurate. Number 2, I guess the old ball and chain thing hasn't really gone away. The idea of being tethered and not free is still out there. And part of it has to do with that illusion of choice that we've spoken about often, having to do with the dating sites and the dating apps and the ability to constantly have a flow of what appears to be choices of more and more women. So looking to lock things down and have only one partner seems even less appealing now, when it seems that you have all the choices in the world. Thousands of women I could swipe through and find one. But when you recognize that half those accounts are bots and half of them are women that don't want to date you and half of them aren't logistically desirable or won't be a match for you based on your values or your interests once you actually meet them, that pool becomes much smaller, but you certainly have the appearance that the choices are unlimited. So choosing to remove yourself from singledom to be with just one person, one ball and chain, doesn't for a lot of fellas seem so appealing in 2023. And then we'd have to recognize that some people just don't see the value in a long-term committed relationship with one person in the way that people did when it was just the norm and something you did because everybody else was doing it. There is just more choice of how you want to live your life and who and how you want to spend it, with one person, with multiple people, with nobody but yourself, with just a bunch of friends. These are all options that are available to us these days, and there's nothing wrong with any of them. So there's just a multitude of ways people can choose to live. And you know, sometimes when I'm get a new client and I realize that he's just gotten out of a marriage or a long-term relationship so recently, I'm always amazed that he's come to not just to go out to the club and hear some music with his eyes on what women might be around like we did back in the old days and before matchmakers and dating coaches were so easy to come across. But I always think to myself, doesn't he want a little time to work on himself or to have a break from putting the work into a relationship and having to focus energies to include another person in all your thoughts and decisions? Just want to chill for a while maybe and be single? But then I remember, what is the value? For men, the value is that statistically, they are happier in a relationship, in a committed relationship. And in fact, men who are married live longer than men who are single. That's a pretty good value right there, I would think. I think it's like 10 years. That might be outdated, but it's still pretty big life expectancy change when you're in a married relationship. But 10 years, that even if it's 6 years, that's still a benefit to your longevity, right? Also, for a lot of those guys who are 50 and over, I would have to say that it's something that they've become accustomed to. They like being cared for and caring for another person, that it's a hard habit to break, having a partner and then suddenly being single. So for divorced people, it's often just something that they're very comfortable with and they're looking to get right back into that once they've had a little bit of time, I suppose. But that's their happy place. That's where they want to be, and they're immediately start their search because they do see a value in that. But that's very often guys who are a little bit older and it's their second time around usually. This one might be because of the internet as well. Our computers, our phones, our tablets are always recommending articles or news based on whatever, maybe something we've Googled recently. I get tons of articles on relationships on my Facebook feed or on my Google News or whatever. And I think that there's a lot of talk and conversation around relationships and working at a relationship, how to make a relationship last. Some of the things I talk about. If you're constantly bumping into my videos and watching them, you would know that relationships aren't something that happen. They're not something you fall into love. You have to work to keep love alive. And I think that part of the reason men aren't willing to jump into the marriage thing currently is because they're reading some of that and recognizing that it's work. and they're not going to be in it to win it. They don't want to put in the work. They have a job, they have a career, they have friends, and they don't need the extra pressure of having to work at a relationship. Perhaps just not the right stage of their life, and for some people that stage never comes around. But I think that could be part of the reason that men aren't super enamored with the idea of marriage. Some men, obviously, this is no generalizations here. These are different things for different people, and some, and of course others, as I mentioned, some of the clients who are just so happy to get right back into a comfortable space, into a relationship. We're all different. Let's celebrate those differences. Next up, I don't know what number we're on. God, this is a horrible habit of mine. I've got to start numbering my notes. It just says lists of things I want to talk about, and there's no number next to them. I don't know. And then I do them out of order, and it's all over. Anyway, no good examples. Sometimes I think that depending on the age range of the man we may be talking about, some men don't have any examples of what a successful marriage looks like. Even if their friends are getting married, those are very new relationships, and often at the beginning, right after the beginning, kind of challenging. So they may be seeing that. They might be seeing all the work that goes into growing a relationship once you've decided to commit to one person. Their parents are divorced. They've watched their friends' parents, their neighbors, their work people go through the separation or divorce of their parents, and they don't have an example of what a relationship looks like when two people are together and happy for a long time. I feel so blessed that my kids have my parents who've been together for this end of this month. It's going to be 62 years they're together. And they've set a great example of how two people choose to be there for the other person and to honor and value the commitment they made and to continue to work to communicate better all the time. So they meant it when they took those vows, and I don't think everybody gets to see that, but I'm super happy that my kids did. Next, I was thinking that loss of freedom is a reason, and not just sexual freedom, although of course we talked about that, and that's certainly a thing, but all kinds of freedom, right? People just see that their life would be changing drastically. In fact, all the reasons that people get cold feet before a wedding, all those things are on people's minds now prior to getting to the altar, right before they go out there to say I do. I think people are just very aware now. Just a loss of being able to do your own thing in your place, your own apartment, you have your job, and you get to just date when you feel like it, not be accountable to anyone. That freedom is hard to give up as time goes by and you get used to being a single person. And the reason this is changing now is that people are getting married later. So these men have more time to become accustomed to their single life, where changing now would have meant that they've spent at least 10 good years as being a single person living independently of their family. And they really are happy and in a good place with the life that they've made for themselves. And adding another person would really put a kink in the life that they've already created. So they start to think twice about whether that's worthwhile to change things up at this point. And then finally, I watched a documentary this week, I think on Netflix. Let me check for the title of it. It would be rude of me to talk about it. And oh gosh, that was me. You ever do that? You're like, I'm looking down. It was called Liberated, The New Sexual Revolution, and it was on Netflix. And I happened upon it and thought, oh, that's about relationships I'm watching. And it was about spring break, college-aged men and women, and about the relationships they're forming with each other and the values they're putting on each other. A lot of it was about expectations of men for that having access to women's bodies and women feeling that acceptance and their own self-worth hinges on being desirable to the opposite sex. I thought it was really interesting, and I recommend it if being aware of culturally the changes that are going on in different sectors of the population is interesting to you. Relationships are, as you must know, always interesting to me, and I don't have much contact with anybody who's 18 to 22 years old these days. So I thought it was really interesting and kind of sad. And I think that it's good to know, right? I think it's good to know. And if there is a young person in your life, you can at least have a conversation about the differences of what you experience compared to the challenges they're having. In any event, a worthwhile watch on Netflix from me to you if you're so inclined. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you found that interesting and or helpful. If you did, my mom there, she's suggesting you give the episode a thumbs up if you found it enjoyable in any way. And I'd appreciate that too. But I'd say, hey, why don't you subscribe to the channel? Then hit the ring bell because it's free, both of them. And then you'll be notified every time a new episode goes live. I appreciate you stopping by today, and I will look forward to next time. Oh, by the way, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Super fun over there. I'll leave a link to that down in the description bar. Until next time, have a good one.